Greg here with Elden Selections. Thank you for clicking on our video. If you would like to taste along with us, click the link in the description and that'll bring you to the wines we are enjoying today. Don't forget to sign up for our email list. We offer all of our subscribers exclusive deals on our wines. And don't forget to follow us on social media for extra content, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and enjoy the tasting. All right, it is 1 o'clock and I think we are going to be all set to get started. So for everybody in the panel, I'm sorry, for everyone who's attending, if you have any questions or anything, please write comments for me, Stephen, and Dennis in the side chat or the Q&A part. I'll be monitoring both. And so my name is Greg. I'm here in the States. If you need anything, any wine recommendations or anything, Stephen and Dennis are both in Burgundy. Stephen has, been a great chef. He's taken his WSET. He's a certified teacher. And Dennis, of course, is the guru of Burgundy. He's been living there for 30 years and knows the terroir like nobody else. So with that, let's get started. So the two bottles, I think both of you guys are on mute. The two bottles we're going to be doing today is the Crémant de Bourgogne from Borgeot, and then the other one is Champagne from Pierre Brigandat. So just a real quick thing about how to open a champagne bottle correctly, because there's so much pressure. There's about 2 atmospheres of pressure inside the bottle. So you want to make sure you have your thumb on the top before you untwist the foil. A lot of times in like a restaurant, they'll put a cloth over just in case, so nothing flies off. And you carefully peel off the top. Again, make sure you have your thumb on it. And then from there, you just twist and pull up really cautiously. And there you go. And then there is another way. So that was the Crémant, and then when we open the champagne, I'll show you how to savor the bottle. So I've been practicing that a little bit. We'll do that a little bit later. So before we start, everyone feel free to pour a drink and start tasting the wines, and we'll start talking about them. Give me 1 second. All right, you guys should be able to unmute yourself. Sorry about that.
Oh, good. I was speechless. I was frantic. Messages. Perfect. To our smooth opening.
Here's everybody. Happy New Year's.
Hello, everyone.
All right,
Greg's a dictator. He won't let us talk.
Technology, I'm still getting used to it sometimes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephen in Domaine Borgeot. I'm in the nearly refurbished library here, which is very, very pleasant to sit in. So a little bit of a different background to the press bar, which we had for other tastings. Very excited to do the sparkling wine one this evening.
All right, so let's get into the Crémant. So this one is produced by Domaine Borgeot, as I said before. And let me just show you a picture of him. Dennis, how long have you known Borgeot?
We met. There's a yearly event in January every year called the Saint Vincent Tournant, and it's sort of like passing the Saint Vincent statue from village to village, and every year a different village takes on to have the celebration. And we met Pascal when Santé had the festival in 1989. And it was more because we'd already known him a little while before then, because when we were with our hotel barge, the Papillon, the canal went right behind his house. So it was sort of a serendipitous meeting. We just sort of walked across the bridge, and he was the closest winemaker to the canal. It turns out. And the rest is history.
Cool.
Yeah, and he makes such a great range of wines that we have, both red and white. Some of the white's extremely spectacular. And the grapes for this Crémant de Bourgogne are actually Pinot Noir and Aligoté, so no Chardonnay in this. And he's based, okay, yeah, good, thanks, Greg, good map. So if you see Changy there, the very southern tip of the Côte de Beaune, so the grapes come from this kind of Puligny, Chassagne, and just touching into the northern end of the Côte de Beaune. The village there, Bouzeron, you can just see it's the most, like, yeah, that's it, perfect. So that's the home of Aligoté. And so the Pinot Noir and Aligoté coming from just that little southern tip.
Really close to Crémant.
Also very close to Crémant, yeah.
I think we're only like 10 kilometers or so from there.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, many small producers make and have grapes to make Crémant. A couple make them in-house, and some of them have a specialist to make them as well. Because we're going to talk deeper about the production method of Crémant de Bourgogne and Champagne when we touch on the Champagne. We'll talk about the production method, which is really, really interesting to dig into. And if people want to see the amount of effort and work that goes into creating this just, bubbly drink, it's a lot more.
When classifying a Crémant, can the grapes be anywhere in Burgundy and any kind of grape to make it?
Yeah. So if the grapes come, I mean, it's like every wine, and it's a regional appellation AOC wine. Actually, accounts the sales are quite interesting. I was looking it up recently, and 20% of all regional wine sales are down to Crémant.
Wow.
But there's a couple of things about Crémant that's interesting. First of all, there's a lot of regions, 9 regions in France that are allowed to produce Crémant, but Burgundy, because it has a lot of the similar grapes, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, as Champagne, there's a similarity there that you don't get from other Crémants around France. And that's important for people to realize. And it's probably one of the reasons that after Champagne, Crémant is probably the next most expensive sparkling wine, because the quality is, even though it's not, there's a difference, and the difference should be celebrated, but it's Crémant de Bourgogne, the quality is considered,
right,
excellent also.
Well,
so
the two regions butt up against each other, don't they? I mean, there's a point when you're driving north from Chablis where you're in the Appellation Bourgogne, and wines that are made there are called Crémant, and then you cross this geopolitical line, and you're on the other side, you're in Champagne. So it's, I mean, for those producers living up there, it really is night and day. But they do, it's. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of like a seamless transition between the two, except for the fact that there's a geopolitical boundary.
So
yeah.
Does Champagne butts up closer to Chablis, though, correct?
No. Well, where we're going to taste the Champagne from is actually very close to the border of Burgundy and Champagne. But coming back to your question about Crémant, it's like, and just can the grapes come from anywhere in Burgundy? And it's true that they can. But the way we come at Crémant and our Champagne is the same philosophy that we have with our producers. And, even though the grapes politically and legally can come within anywhere, because our producers are small, it's the same as our regional wines nearly. Their Crémant and their Champagne are both terroir based, and it's something that's been lost with sparkling wine over the years, but hopefully is starting to return, and this more terroir focused sparkling wine is coming back, and it's to the benefit of small producers. And so I think that it's important to know that even though, like any regional wine, politically, they can come from within a large region, with our producers, and as we expand our sparkling wine range, we'll be focusing on this more. The terroir is the element that kind of sings through the wine. Is that correct, Dan? No?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely taste a difference in champagne versus every other sparkling wine that I get. It's, I know it's usually a little bit more expensive, but there's something about it that I just can't put my finger on, and maybe that's it, but it's just so much more clean and crisp, and overall just, I don't know, it just blends together a little bit better, and that's probably because of the terroir and how long they've been perfecting it too. So should we get into the tastings?
I think as we expand the range of sparkling wines that we have on our list, I think maybe that philosophy may be challenged a bit, because there's some ones coming over that really, I mean, there's a difference, but the quality is equal between the two regions. So it'll be interesting when we do one of these tastings at, the end of next year, and we'll see how our sparkling wine opinions have maybe changed or remained. It's fine to say both.
So let's get into the tasting. So for the Crémant, I do still like to use flute sometimes. So for this one, I'm going to use a flute, but we can get into the glasses a little bit later too.
Yeah, I always use quite a wide white wine glass. I like the wine to come out, be exposed. So
Dennis, you were telling me a little bit something about a swizzle stick prior. I know I've used them while making drinks at a bar.
If you don't mind me taking over the mic for a couple of minutes, I mean, it goes back to a few of the things that you've talked about already. I mean, if you want to talk about the differences between Crémant and Champagne, I think that you want to start by talking about how Champagne developed in terms of popularity to start with. I mean, we'll talk in a little while about what the production method is, how it's made. But the fact of the matter is that when it first came out, it must have just blown people's minds to think that you could have this sort of wine and this sort of finesse. That you could have a wine that had these really fine bubbles, and that it must have been considered magical to people. And from the very inception, it's been, because of its sort of high profile, it's been something that's been very stylish. It goes in and out of fashion. Some people, we go through times when people like it really dry. When people like it sweet. There have been times when people, and when we were talking about glasses and that sort of thing. I mean, anyone of a certain age will remember those flat glasses that were just coupes. Yeah. And that we've gone from there to flutes, and as Stephen says now, it's just regular wine glasses, and this is all fashion. I think the reason that there's been often a change in fashion is because what Champagne became after it was a magical thing, it became a luxury thing, and then of course it became that luxury thing had to become democratized. So as soon as you got into it, where they were selling millions of bottles of wine a year, then you had to make wine that wasn't really necessarily up to the original standards. And it's easy to do that with Champagne because Champagne has to be picked underripe. You have to have high acidity in order for the bubbles to take in Champagne. And that means that the base wine that you make Champagne out of, which we'll talk about later, can be either a properly made wine as we know it, just like you would just pull a cork and open a wine, or it can be something much more harsh and much more acidic that over the course of the manipulation gets doctored. You can add sugared syrups, and the other thing that you can do is you can market it. If you market big, like for instance, the big house champagnes where they have millions and millions and millions of bottles, they have a house style. And that house style is usually sort of like, how would you describe it? Yeasty, toasty.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Brioche kind of.
you wouldn't necessarily say it's fruit driven or even like a regular wine. So to go back to what Greg is saying, he says he's putting up that picture of the swizzle stick. In the old days, when you had a proper vinous wine, a real wine that was made with bubbles, some people didn't like the bubbles. So they would they'd carry these. This was a fashion object. People would have these things that they stick into their lapel, and they'd pull it out at cocktail parties, and they'd swizzle the champagne to get rid of the bubbles, because they wanted to taste a real wine.
Right.
If you were to do that with a bottle of big house standard champagne these days, it would be like the Wizard of Oz is like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It gives the whole trick away. You know.
Yeah. Who doesn't like bubbles?
So then, I mean, we'll get into this. We'll get into this more and more as we do. But it's the whole idea is that champagne can be great or it can be mediocre, and it's the same with Crémant. But we'll find that as we go along.
Yeah. So that swizzle stick, again, just to show one last time, was an 18-karat gold from the early 1900s. It was made. So it was really cool. Definitely old school looking swizzle stick. The ones that today are more like plastic and used to mix drinks, but yeah, that was a really cool thing that Dennis found.
You can still buy one like that on Amazon.com. It's just not 24-karat gold.
So what do you guys think about the Crémant?
On the profile, the first thing that hits me is like a conference pear fruit, very fresh.
Yeah.
I do get some lees aging then coming in next, some of the autolysis. There's lovely fine mousse on it.
It's very clean, nice fine bubbles.
Yeah.
You didn't say yeast or brioche.
There's a little bit of yeast.
No. I said lees aging with some autolysis notes. Yeah, I mean when I said but it's not too yeasty. It's not very yeasty.
To me, you get the Pinot Noir for sure. You get the fruit of the Pinot. There's wine there, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely has a little bit bigger of a mouthfeel to it, which is probably coming from the Pinot Noir. Do you know how long he usually ages his bottles before he sends them out? I know it's not vintage, but does he sit the bottles in the cellar for a particular time?
He was a bit cagey. I think it's about 12 months. I mean, 9 months on lees aging is the minimum, but like every quality producer goes a lot more than the minimum that's allowed. I know that Crémant often do 2-3 years on the lees aging.
Yeah, because I mean, one thing about champagne is once it's been bottled, it doesn't get better. The aging takes place before it's actually the final bottling happens. I mean, we'll talk about this when we're talking about the production process too. But the real quality comes before the wine is actually elaborated and the final dosage and the final cork put in. It's sort of like the longer you leave it on the lees, on the yeasty sediments, as long as those are good clean lees, the better.
Interesting. That's fascinating. I would have thought, is it because of the CO2 inside of the bottle that's why it's not aging during when it's sitting in the bottle? Because I would imagine if it's, like if it was bottled in 2008 and you don't drink it till 2020, it would taste a little different than, in between there sometime.
Yeah, it's not going to get any better.
Interesting.
They do say that you want to drink it in, within a year or two of the time that it's been degorged. But I mean, after the degorgement and the final preparation of the bottle, it's not like something you put in your cellar.
Yeah.
It's a finished product.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought you could age champagne like anything else, but it doesn't go bad though, right? It would still keep its freshness and everything, but it doesn't.
Yeah, for sure.
The flavor profile.
For sure. But I mean, the quality the quality that you get out of any sparkling wine is before it's actually degorged. Once it's been degorged, it's not necessarily improving.
Gotcha. So should we get into
as it bottle ages after disgorgement in your cellar or wherever, there will be some oxidation that will start happening. It's not necessarily improvement, but you know, it can happen that you'll open an old champagne that's bottle aged after disgorgement.
Gotcha. But it's, yeah. So like Dennis was saying, you just still drink it within that year period of time just because of that oxidation.
Or more. But I guess what I'm saying is, when you're making a quality wine, the work goes in before you actually do the degorgement.
So someone just asked a question: how long is the length of time that the sparkling wine can be cellared without losing much flavor? So you would say about a year or two.
Quality of the cork.
Quality of the cork. Okay. Cool. So should we start drinking our champagne and get into the nuts and bolts of what people are here to see today?
I would say also, you know, come back to thinking about sparkling wine as wine. And so even though the quality of the cork, there will be some structure within the wine, and some wines will stand up to cellar aging longer than others.
Okay.
So consider that as well if you have a cellar, you know, with a decent amount of champagne in it.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they won't last, that they won't age, but the quality's in the bottle already. Like
Right.
I guess it's true. I guess it's true with any wine ultimately. But I mean, you're not expecting to put champagne down for it to get better.
Right. I got you. Okay. That's not. Yeah.
Again,
All right, so
just to finish the Crémant, just the tasting kind of notes. Like I said, I think I would say the first note that hits me is that kind of conference pear. It's a fruit profile that hits first, and then move on to the kind of results of the production method that we spoke of already. And I get more of a limestoney kind of a minerality on the finish on the Crémant. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say too. It does have a little bit of that lees aging and stuff, but the limestone really comes through.
And if you think of it, you know, just again, we're trying to change people's perceptions and thought processes about the wine. And, you know, this is grown on a different soil, a different terroir type to the champagne. And so, you know, just like the wine, the expression of the terroir will come through on like it's the terroir and the winemaking principles that will result in what's in your glass. And think of it that way, rather than just the bubbles and just the simple celebratory drink.
Right. Yeah. You have to think about champagne as more than just bubbles.
So I just wanted to talk about the finish that way, because that was something that struck me about the Crémant, and then it was different within the champagne.
Right. Yeah. All right. So to how to savor a bottle. So this is the Brigandat. The way that I learned, again, you want to keep your finger on the cork until you're ready, but you hold it at about a 45-degree angle. And then you take the back side of your knife, not the sharp side. And then you have to kind of tap it. Every time I don't tap it, for whatever reason, the top doesn't come off. And then you just kind of go like this. And voila, you got it. So that's the easy way to savor it. Don't try it at home. Make sure if you do try it, I would try it outside first because the bottle can break. I've done that a few times before. So, but yeah, so essentially just a clean break.
Don't do it over your computer.
Yeah, that too. Probably not the best spot, but bubbles may come out.
A successful attempt like that has got no chance of going viral. I thought you were going to deliberately, you know, let it go wrong.
Break it. Yeah, if you YouTube savoring gone wrong, there's a lot of bottles that people break and they explode and things like that, which are very fun to watch, but I can imagine they're a little scary when they happen while the bottle's in your hand.
Yeah. So maybe we should actually talk about the production method, and then as we talk about the wine, we'll be able to relate back to how, you know, so everybody's on top of the production method. That would be a good way to do one, I think. So will I go for it?
Yeah, let's talk about
You're
the
the
method.
educator.
Okay. So generally the idea is very, very, well, it's a simple philosophy. It makes sense when you think about it. So the idea, like Dennis said, is to make a base wine. It's very important that the base wine is low alcohol, because there's going to be a second fermentation in the bottle that will raise the alcohol level to the, you know, a desired amount. So if you start off with a base wine that's too ripe and rich, you'll end up with a champagne after the second fermentation that is ridiculously high in alcohol and just out of balance. So the first thing, and that's why the regions are suitable for sparkling wine, really suitable, because they're able to make a low alcohol, high acid base wine. Usually, so they press, the cuvee is the first free run juice. Usually the quality champagne, even Crémant, is made from this. On the base wine, lees stirring is still important to try and create some complexity within the base wine. And one thing that's interesting about champagne is you can use a word that generally in Burgundy is totally avoided. For rosé, you can blend a white and a red to make a rosé, or you can use the Saignée method, the bleeding method. But after you have your base wine, and more the base wines are becoming complex, they're becoming celebrated. People are starting to talk more and more about the terroir, especially the small producers. So that's what, you know, going forward we'll be thinking and referencing on our site. So when you have your decent,
just really quick, the way that champagne used to be grown and produced was big negociant houses would come and buy up all the small producers' grapes, and then they would blend it all to make their house style. But like today, there's a lot more grower producers, and so that you're getting more of a sense of, you know, exactly where they're coming from and how that village or vineyard or whatever actually impacts on the flavor. Is that correct?
This goes back to what I was saying earlier. I mean, in the early days, everyone was making their own wine, and they were making a decent wine. When the big negociant houses got in, I mean, if you've ever been to Champagne and you've gone on one of those tours and you get on a little plastic train and they put you down in those cellars and you go for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles, and it's nothing but, I mean, millions and millions and millions and millions of bottles. So essentially, there's no way that they can produce that sort of wine and have a base wine that is A, consistent so that you have a house style, and B, decent enough to produce anything other than a concocted house style. So you end up with a type of champagne that has been marketed as this is what champagne is, and you've been, you know, my take on it is you've been marketed to believe that that's what champagne is. But now, as you both of you guys have been saying, is we're coming back now to the 3,500 small independent producers in Champagne who are making their own wines, and they've gone back to making real wine, and so they're making champagne out of real wine. So you've lost that sort of that house style, big production style, and just to finish, if you look at any of the big houses, Moet Chandon, Veuve Clicquot, Mums, and you know, any Bollinger, any of them, they all have huge productions that they can crank out millions and millions of bottles every year. But they all have a luxury end, the top end, you know, Dom Perignon or whatever the label may be in the house that you're talking about, and those are the real wines. They call them luxury wines. They get, you know, $100, $150 a bottle for them. But essentially, all that they're doing is taking and making a handmade wine out of some real wine, which is what all of these small producers are doing anyway. So we are on the road here to going back to small production champagne at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, I love small production champagne. It's really exciting. I think there's a little bit more uniqueness to everything too when you're doing it that way. So we have a.
Yeah, and think about it, just to relate your question back to what you said. Think about it in terms of Burgundy. I mean, a lot of the small producers, the families a few generations ago, or even 1 or 2 generations ago, were selling the grapes off. And now the new generations have decided, you know what, our grapes are good enough. They're actually too good to just do this with. We're going to create a viable business by, and that's happened in Burgundy, and it's happening in Champagne, and we're part of that movement.
This wine, this family in the generation before this sold everything that they grew to Mercier, and it was there was no. Bertrand Brigandat's father, Pierre, was the first one to not sell to the big negotiant houses, and it's a sea change in the way Champagne's gone. It's taking time because everyone thinks Champagne, it has to be what the traditional model of it is, but it's something else altogether, and it can be really, really exciting wine.
Yeah. So we have a question from the Smiths and Henrys. Stephen, what are you pairing with the Champagne? Right now, the Smiths and Henrys are pairing oysters, potato chips, brie, and beef tartare, which sounds like an excellent lunch.
That's a great combination. And that's probably the order to eat it in as well. First, the chips and the beef tartare.
Very Parisian. Sounds very Parisian.
Yeah. We recently done, if you check out the YouTube channel, we recently done and our website, the recipe section, we recently done a scallop with pan-fried scallops with a ginger beurre blanc and some sprout leaves and kind of winter vegetables. And so I would say check that out. But it comes back to oysters, obviously, is a great choice. But it comes back to, there's great acidity in the wine. So the great thing about the question is, we are trying to celebrate our sparkling wine range in Champagne and Crémant as food wines, and especially the more complex ones. It's just like the wines we have, and so we're going to be pushing more food and wine pairings with our sparkling range.
Yeah,
because the wines are they're too complex just to open and have a glass before dinner.
Right.
These are wines that we can have tastings, we can have dinner tastings with. I mean, in one sense, their question has a wide range of foods, and it's interesting because obviously a selection canopy before dinner, as long as you have a nice selection canopy, does work well with these sparkling wines. So, but check out the recipes on the YouTube channel and site would be the answer, I'd say.
Someone else put fried onion rings, which, that is funny, but fried foods in Champagne, I think are just delicious.
Yeah. The fatness of any food, like fish and chips, is really good with Champagne. If you have something that's fatty, the cleanliness and the crispness and the refreshing acidity and the bubbles even cut through that and refresh your palate, ready for your next mouthful of yummy fried fish and chips. It works. It does work.
Someone also has said that they miss Stephen and Ellie's meals at Domaine de Cromy. I'm very jealous. I wish that I was able to go. That was from Al Smith. But I haven't been there yet. I'm definitely excited to eat both of their foods.
Well, we all miss them too. I mean, we got Ellie in one place and Stephen in the other place. We haven't been able to get them together very often.
Yeah. I'm sure their meals combined are just absolutely exquisite.
Oh, it's been a funny year, but we're gonna get out of it. We're gonna get back to it.
Yeah, we're very lucky. Very lucky to have.
Anyway, thanks, Al. We look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah. So after our base wine, coming back to our method. So after the base wine, they want to do a second fermentation in the bottle. So that's why all sparkling wines and champagnes, Crémants have this heavy set bottle. It's not just for the look. It's because it's a fermentation vessel. The second fermentation is going to happen in here. And all fermentation really is yeast eats sugar. That's a really simple, very simple way to put it. And after yeast eats sugar, what's left is alcohol, carbon dioxide, and heat. So in this case, the carbon dioxide is trapped, and the alcohol is trapped within the bottle. And so that's where the bubbles are created. And that's how the base wine that's low alcohol suddenly becomes, a little bit more. Although I would just remind everyone, these two, the Crémant is 12.5% volume, and the Champagne, for me, on my one, is 12%. So...
You said 12%? Yeah, that's what we...
12 on my one, yeah. So, really nice low alcohol wines compared to a lot of wines that are out there. And that comes down to the climate just really suits these kind of wines here.
Yeah.
So that's the fermentation in the bottle. And then they need to allow the dead yeast cells, which are called the lees, to impart flavor onto the wine. So it's called autolysis, is the range of flavors. It can be nuts, it can be yeast, it can be, some kind of aged autumnal fruits. And, then in Crémant, as I said earlier, the minimum is 9 months that the bottle has to sit with these dead lees, and in Champagne it's a year. But the truth is they go many years, because as Dennis really explained well, that's this is all where the quality is made. The quality is made in the base wine, the quality is made in this second fermentation and the lees aging. And once you come to the stage where you want to get rid of the lees after a few years, you riddle the bottle. I think you have a picture of it. So they're slowly allowing the lees to come to the neck of the bottle.
Yeah, let me just...
so historically done by hand. Remuage, is that remuage in French? Remuage. So these guys, you can see, I didn't do it by hand. It's 1/8 turn, and really cool.
So this is kind of how it starts. It starts pretty flat, and then they slowly get on the top. And then at the bottom, this last one here, all the sediment is basically on, which looks like a bottle cap from like a beer or a Coca-Cola top.
Yeah.
So all the lees settles on there, and that's how they filter it.
Yeah.
So this is more of a modern day riddling system. And then this is what it used to look like. Where people were, there's a bunch of people just going through and hand turning everything.
Yeah, the mechanical process is gyro pallets, and the manual process is a lot cooler looking, but a lot more expensive. So the bottles end up, completely upside down, ready for disgorgement, and then the bottle is cooled and the neck is dipped in a brine solution, which freezes the neck, and this Coca-Cola type top is popped off, and the frozen capsule is disgorged with the sediment. And then at that stage, the liquor d'exposition, dosage, is filled up. And at that stage, there's another choice to be made, because they'll refill to the correct level of wine, but they can also add some sugar at that stage. And there is a trend by a very few, overall sales wise, very few, but a very kind of a trendy and interesting from a taste perspective move to put no sugar in, which is kind of considered zero dosage Champagne or Crémant, which would ultimately leave the bottle with 0 to kind of 3, so minuscule sugar level.
Yeah, so I have a quick video of disgorging the bottles. it was a little hard for me to wrap my head around before I saw this video. So this is kind of what it is. It'll get a little bit better. So he essentially takes the bottles from right there.
That's the
looks like a bottle cap. Yeah.
That's the disgorgement, yeah.
Yeah, and then so he just puts his thumb over to hold the bottle wine in, and then afterwards, so this is where they get the dosage. So it fills up the wine to a certain point and adds a little bit of sugar into it if they choose to. And then this is the corking process. So down here, he's got all the sanitized corks, put it in here, and then just a mechanic mechanism pushes the cork down.
Yeah. So even a brut champagne or Crémant level can have 0 to 12 grams of sugar. You know, there's different ranges, but as Dennis said earlier, the sweeter ones are definitely becoming less and less fashionable. Brut is probably, you know, we don't have anything sweeter than brut, and we actually have a brut nature Crémant, I think, on its way, which is really interesting, and I love it. It's very, very interesting. So that's certainly something to look out for.
I can remember when I was working in the wine trade in England in the late 70s. You still had demi-sec. I mean, they were sweet. You know, they were going out of style, but there was still a clientele for them. It's funny now because we like them bone dry, don't we? It's like almost it's like we're appreciating champagne, the same things in champagne that we're looking for in Chablis, the minerality, the you know, that kind of severity, that kind of acidity.
So we got a couple of questions. One, would the Brigandat be considered a grower champagne? And that is yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess, and for champagne, because I know we were talking about Crémant with how long it's aged. How long is champagne aged, like the minimum and all those requirements?
The lease aging is 12 months, but again, you know, it's 2 or 3. Often it can be much longer. It can be much longer, depending on the producer, depending on the style of wine. And then, as you know, just important to remember the point that Dennis made. Once they finish the production method and put the final cork in, you know, it's not something that you're deliberately gonna let sit and bottle age in your cellar. It happens, people do it. Sometimes people kind of mistakenly
age too long.
I mean, some people like the slight oxidation that happens. Right. But, you know, the quality, you know, Dennis made a good point at the beginning. The quality of the production method is where the quality is. And quality of the terroir to start with.
And to the question that Greg's addressing, that's you know, it's there are going to be legal minimums, and as Stephen says, 12 months on the lease. But when you're talking about developing elegance and finesse, really, the longer you leave them on, the better the wine, the finer the lees. The finer the lees, the longer you can leave it on the lees, and the longer you leave it on the lees, the more elegant and more finesse. And that's where the fine bubbles come from. That's where all of that subtlety comes from. Is really just the patience of leaving it on the lats.
Interesting.
We say on the lees. The lees is the sediments, but on the lats, those are the wooden things that the bottles sit on. And they talk about how many months on the lats the base wine bottles go, and you know, often they talk about 9 months for standard wines, but I mean, you can go for years.
Right. Yeah, it just depends on what the producer wants to do. I do have to give a shout out to the Petzels and Trudeau's. They are having cucumber canapes with caviar, French cheeses, oyster, foie gras, chilled shrimp, and then quinoa and salad greens. So what a lunch!
That sounds
I was going to say, is that Lake Michigan caviar?
Yeah, only the best from Lake Michigan. All right, so we should get into Brigandat and kind of where they're from and things along those lines.
Yeah, so the region that, you know, there's a few regions in Champagne, and Brigandat are in the most southerly region, which is called Côte de Bar, just butts up against Burgundy, really. So you can see there's 5 main regions. There's the soil type, certainly not limestone. So yeah, there's the 5 main regions within Champagne. The Montagne de Reims, the way I kind of think of it is the Montagne de Reims and the Côte de Bar are connected through Pinot Noir. I mean, there are exceptions, but you know, they're kind of known for that. Côte de Blanc and Côte de Suzanne are more Chardonnay, and the Vallée de la Marne is Pinot Meunier. And you know, they're generalizations, but they have some basis to consider. Vallée de la Marne is, you know, Pinot Meunier comes later in the season than the other two, so it suits because the whole region has to be careful of spring frost, but especially Vallée de la Marne. But coming back to Brigandat, they're in Côte de Bar, and they're just actually, if you go south to the border, a bit more the other way. Yeah, there, you know, a bit more.
This is the furthest south production of Champagne, Brigandat.
So what does that, is there, what's the difference between like Côte de Bar's climate and the rest of Champagne, or, you know, just what sets them apart terroir-wise?
You see that they're not grouped on the same map. They're actually on two separate maps. They're 2 separate regions, and they do produce. I mean, the majority of the wines that you wouldn't recognize, any names that you would recognize, come from the area around Reims and Epernay, which is going to be up in this the Montagne de Reims and the Côte de Blanc, that sort of stuff. That's where the Côte de Blanc is where the great Chardonnays are made, and that's some of the most magnificent single vineyard and luxury champagnes are made there. However,
yeah, that's where like Salon and like Krug and stuff comes from.
Exactly, yeah. But this area, the Côte de Bar, has since we've been talking about the small production champagne. There's a huge number of people producers in this area who used to just be farmers who supplied their vines to the big houses, and now there's the Côte de Bar. If you start to look through some of the guides of you know, the guys that specialize in Champagne, there are a ton of small producers down here. A lot of young, enthusiastic people working on their own, making their own style. It's a renaissance, really. You know, it's sort of a backlash to the big production house Champagne style.
Right. Yeah, so it's kind of like the new generation. Just like in some areas, there's new generation of Burgundy winemakers that make it a little bit different. That's kind of where that's going down in Champagne.
Yeah, exactly, and everywhere, really.
So I mean,
so after discussing the production method, we should be able to dig into the wine a little bit with.
Yeah. So one really cool picture, let me just share my screen again, that I love is this one right here, because it's Champagne's based in chalk soil, right? A lot of it. Yeah. So this is just a beautiful example of what the color of the soil is. It's very bright, almost reflective.
We've got, oh, there we go. Oh, yes, that's right. Good.
And then here are the vines, but I feel like I can taste the chalk on the wines, and to me that it makes a big difference in the difference with Champagne and other sparkling wines. But I'm sure
you realize this is the very same strain of rock that the Channel Tunnel is cut out of, and this is the same strain of rock that are the White Cliffs of Dover. It's one continuous line all the way from here to into southeast England. And that explains why there's a huge interest in champagne production in southeast England now as global warming comes on. There are some fantastic sparkling wines being made in southeast England.
So they didn't used to be able to be made there because it was a little too cold, and now it's getting warmer. And wow.
And the thing is, it's a fine line here. I mean, when we talk about the difference between Crémant and Champagne, between the line of a wine production between Burgundy and Champagne has to do more with the ability of the wines to come to ripeness or not. Burgundy is the furthest north that you can make a still wine. Champagne, it makes sparkling wines because the grapes don't come to maturity really well. It's one of those kind of things that's where they took a fault and made it into an advantage.
USP.
What'd you say, Stephen?
They took a fault and made it into a USP.
Yeah. So yeah, it's it's very interesting.
A unique selling point.
Oh, I see.
That was too cryptic, sorry. So one of the interesting things about the two wines tonight, no Chardonnay, we haven't tried any Chardonnay. So
yeah, so
Blanc de Noir, this is Pinot Noir.
And Blanc de Noir can be both either Pinot Meunier or Pinot Noir.
Correct.
It can. And it's interesting because I think we have a Blanc de Noir coming again, not to harp on about what we're going to do, but it's interesting to me. Later in the year, that is a Blanc de Noir with Meunier, which is really interesting.
So I absolutely love this champagne. It's probably one of my favorites that I've ever tried.
It's great. It's great.
Partly as I had it for my wedding, so it's maybe a little bit of bias, but I just think it's like the fruit on it. There's like subtle raspberry and like cherries on it. So it's just a little bit more mouthfilling than the Chardonnay champagne would be. But then on the finish, I mean, it still has that like backbone, maybe a little bit slight of a bitterness, like maybe cherry oak or something like that kind of flavor. But it's just very big, round, still has a nice zippiness to it. And obviously I love the bubbles on it. What do you guys think?
Definitely get the red fruits. And I actually get like, I was tasting it with Lily earlier and she said, it's like a midsummer red apple from an orchard. It's that kind of red apple, but freshly picked, not oxidized, but just really, and I got that note then straight. I mean, I thought that was a really good. Yeah. I'm always stealing her tasting notes. That's
that's very good. It's just on the edge of that acidity that would make you pucker.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's that perfect balance.
I think you get a lot of the qualities on the mid palate from the production method that we've just spoke of. So as the wine was allowed to rest on the lats, on the lees, then you can see all them flavors imparted into the wine, nicely balanced. And then I get again, whereas I had that lime. This was one of the most interesting things about tasting the two wines for me. On the Crémant, I had that kind of limestoney mineral finish, and on this I have like a red berries come back into the finish again for me. So it really kind of hits onto the Pinot Noir notes.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
It's a blend of 3 different terroirs of Pinot Noir, I think, for this, which is interesting. So he's really thought about this, the balance of different terroir within the wine.
Right.
And when you on the finish, you get that sort of the acidity that drives the fruit on, but you also have there's a real fullness. It's you wouldn't say fat. It's not like fat like you would talk about like with a still wine, but there's a fullness as opposed to a lean. Champagne can be lean and in the way that say a left bank Chablis can be lean and hard mineral. This has a fullness of fruit that stays on the palate. It's almost it's not like on the longness of your palate. It's like coating your tongue, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Fullness of fruit.
Right. Instead of just going right down the middle of your tongue, it rounds out like most wines do.
Yeah.
So it gives you a little bit more
I really feel, I mean, I feel not militant, but I feel strongly that, you know, the wine just suits that glass, because as the bubbles dissipate, you know, which they have in this now, you know, you just get that wine, and it's just like you could just spend 20 minutes just smelling the phenolics in there.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, this is
lovely. And the wine, you know, that
lovely.
type of piece of wine glass captures that, allows that to be released, and makes you realize the secret that we've been talking about from the beginning. It's what's behind the bubble. Although I like the bubbles at the start, no problem.
First few sips.
For sure. That, and this is where we're going. And Stephen and I have done some amazing tastings in the past couple of months, both of Champagne and of Crémant. And one of the reasons that we wanted to put this tasting on in the first place is because we're really going to put some emphasis on this now, because we're starting to see a real real wine version of Champagne and Crémant is coming to fruition. It's like there's a real renaissance going on in terms of the quality of the base wine, in terms of the quality of the finesse of the small production wines, and they need to be put forward and known in the same way that we've always tried to do with our small production Burgundy producers. So that you'll be hearing a lot more from us about this sort of stuff as the months go on.
Yeah, I'm really excited for all of our new sparkling wines. Somebody brought up a good question. I know these are non-vintage for sparklers, Champagne and Crémant. Are the wines better with vintage one year versus another? I think so, but love to hear your thoughts. So vintage versus non-vintage, I guess, is the first part, and then does vintage matter with Champagne?
Both of these wines would be blended reserve wines they would be, both of them, vintage wines to which a previous wine has been added in order to be able to give some sort of continuity and style.
Yeah.
And it's an excellent point, because to address what we were just talking about in the wines that Stephen and I have been tasting recently, we've tasted some Crémants which are uniquely vintage, even though they don't say it. They don't put the vintage on the label. It's just that the producer, who does not blend the wines from vintage to vintage, so they bottle the entirety of their vintage. These will be in that traditional style where you take your present vintage and you add a little bit of your reserve wine to it in order to have a house style, and that's always been the way things have gone, but that's changing now.
Yeah, so I think for me too, with non-vintage versus vintage, the wines vary a lot. Just like a regular bottle of wine, the vintage wines, that Champagne can vary in flavor, versus non-vintage, they do to keep that house flavor, so kind of what the taste that you're getting all the time is. Would you say that's correct? And then vintage is just kind of like an extraordinary year.
There should be some uniqueness when they decide to make, well, it's not there should be, there will be some uniqueness when they decide to make the vintage, and that's it, because no point making the vintage wine that's the same as a non-vintage. So they want to celebrate the difference of the weather that year, like with our regular producers here in Burgundy. We celebrate that every year, but it's not you know, it's not suitable in champagne. So
Yeah.
but my point is, if you get a vintage wine, I wouldn't say there's any one that, I wouldn't say vintage is better than non-vintage. It's just that they shouldn't be the same.
Right.
You know, they should be, and again, it's about celebrating difference. Like, I think we should, you know, celebrate difference between the terroir, difference between producers. As long as quality is there, then difference should be celebrated, you know.
Yeah, but it is true when you have a champagne producer and they declare a vintage. I mean, we're seeing a lot of 2013s come out of Champagne right now, and everyone's saying it's a fantastic vintage. And I've tasted a few of them, and it is true, they're great. But what that means, that's not like that back in 2013, they picked the grapes, they made the wine in 2000, in 2014, they put it in the bottle, and it's labeled as 2013. That's 2013 that's been sitting on the lees, on lats since 2013. They're just putting it on the market now. That just means that it was such a good vintage that they have kept it that long on the lees. So now they're degorging it now and putting it on the market. So I mean, it's a decision by the producer that vintage, that a particular vintage and a particular maybe one vineyard it has a great potential.
Yeah.
That said, champagne producers have to produce those millions and millions and millions of bottles every year. So they allow themselves the luxury of producing a vintage champagne, for which they charge you a fortune. But I mean, we're talking now about, even you laugh, but I mean, we're talking now about Crémant producers who are talking about producing single vineyard vintage Crémants. I mean, we're getting to the sort of point of quality, and it's not that much more expensive than your average Crémant.
One last thing I just wanted to touch upon. I thought it was an important point to make for people that are trying to get a grip or grasp on Champagne and Crémant, and things to remember. Champagne is one AOC, so the whole region is just one AOC. And then you'll see there, I think there's 44 Premier Crus, 17 Grand Crus, but please don't equate them terms the same as you do within Burgundy. They don't mean the same things. When you see a Champagne Grand Cru or a Champagne Premier Cru, it's not the same. In Burgundy, each of the Grand Crus have their own AOC. So, you know, it's the actual vineyard that is allocated the potential quality to make that wine. That's what we talk about all the time. Don't transfer that to be identical in Champagne. It's not. You know, there's villages that are kind of Grand Cru or Premier Cru villages. It's a very broad term, and they are not legally defined in the same way. So don't get too caught up on the classification system within Champagne, and think of it like Champagne AOC. The whole region is just one AOC. That's what they've got to work upon. So I just wanted, because I just thought it was an important point to make for anyone that is, you know, just kind of discovering or trying to dig into champagnes, that they don't get too caught out on following the classification system up there and thinking that it's identical to Burgundy. It's different. Nothing. The French make things difficult, and then they throw in loads of exceptions to make it more difficult. So, but we're here to demystify it, and that's just a simple way of demystifying that. I just wanted to that was one of the points I wanted to make before.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Because when I first was trying champagnes and learned about Grand Cru and Premier Cru, like I would see, you know, the prices can be just so variant between them. And there are some like even really high-end champagnes that aren't Grand Cru or aren't Premier Cru. And I just thought kind of like, why? And it's more of, you know, the whole village is a Premier Cru versus just that particular vineyard. So and again, like, you know, in Burgundy, the soils can vary so much from parcel to parcel. Same thing in Champagne. So it is a little bit different, especially if you're looking for something like a good bottle. I think you just look for the producer that you like.
And talking about glasses, I don't know if you can see my thing. Bronwyn just sent me a video of one of the coolest coupes I've ever seen. I hope I can show it to you.
Ooh, that's beautiful.
Okay, so that's the coupe, and actually the wine is in the stem as well. So the
Oh my
bubbles are
God.
from the stem up into the coupe glass.
That reminds me of during like Prohibition kind of coupe glasses.
Yeah, classy glass, classy woman.
Yeah, very classy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Bronwyn. Yeah, I've seen glasses up in the Champagne region where they do that sort of thing. It's not quite the coupe, but it goes down into the stem, and this is another thing too. There are little tricks of the trade. If you had an absolutely perfectly smooth glass surface, there would be no bubbles.
Mm.
It's only the imperfections or impurities in the glass that catch the air and make the bubbles form. I mean, it'll never happen. You'll never get the absolutely perfectly smooth glass. But it used to be that champagne producers, when they were doing tastings, would take a little bit of sandpaper and rough up the inside of the glass just to make the bubbles produce a little bit more.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should drink out of plastic then. I'm just kidding.
Just drink straight from the bottle.
All right, so
I think we could agree to come back in kind of November time would be another time to do a good sparkling tasting.
absolutely, yeah.
The new range will be there, and one of the things that me and Den, the last couple of months, along with Ellie and Lily, have really kind of dug into this sparkling range more and more, both here in Burgundy and Champagne. We both came back to the happy realization that the two sparkling wines that we're drinking this evening fit so well into the new collection. It's not like we're substituting these for new ones. We're just these ones remain quality, as does the new ones that are coming in.
They're more like the reference point to start from.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So I know we normally have a special deal for you when it comes to if you join the tasting, we give special deals. So I do have a case if you would like to buy these 6 bottles of Crémant and 6 bottles of Champagne. I will put that into the comments really quick. But the other thing that we have is Dennis. I don't know if you want to explain it, but Dennis will have a special offer for you when the new wines get in too.
Well, we've been talking a lot about the tastings that we've been doing with Crémant and Champagne over the past few months, Stephen and myself and Ellie and Lily. And we have a shipment on the water right now that'll be arriving at the end of February of 2 new producers, one a Champagne producer and one a Crémant producer. And usually when I have new wines coming in, we have our group of insiders who we give first dibs to on all wines as they're coming in, so that they're the first ones to see what's going on. But since you've all been involved in this tasting of the sparkling wines, sort of exceptionally, what we're going to do is add all of you to the list of of my usual insiders, the old, the tried and true clients, for a one-time only offer of these wines that are in transit right now, and that's going to come out on the 27th, Wednesday the 27th, and it'll give you an opportunity to see these wines before they get here, give you an introductory insider's price, and in addition, this is the first time only, we'll throw in we have on the same shipment, we have some lovely glassware coming over with the Elden logo on it, and we'll throw in two of the Champagne flutes to go with that.
Could I get in on that deal?
Yeah. Anyway, you'll see it. we'll get that to you. We'll put you on that list for the Wednesday, 27th mailing if you're interested.
Perfect. Yeah. So everyone look out for that. And again, if you have any questions or you want to order something besides the pre-packaged case that I've given or what Dennis has to offer in a couple of weeks, please feel free to give me a call. My number is on the website, or email me at greg@burgundywine.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media if you want to look at more tastings or recipes that Stephen does and Ellie out of Ellie's recipe book. And yeah, enjoy, and we'll hear from you all very soon.
Yep, always a pleasure.
Also look for our next tasting is on Valentine's Day. If you're looking for something to do, it's again going to be the same time with San Roman.
If you've got nothing else to do.
We want to crash your intimate Valentine's Day dinner.
Really, we'll be here.
Yeah.
No, we had a thinking.
Greg, you just got married.
Yeah. She'll be on the tasting.
Yeah. Maybe we can join you for the canopies, and then you can have the dinner with the wine. So that would be good.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Sounds great.
Anyway, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. And
thank you. Happy New Year.
Soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.